Sup, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome back to episode 2. I'm Tony.
And I'm Josh.
And we are Creepin' It Real. How's it going, buddy?
It's good, man. I'm actually really excited about this one. Last time we did a lot of free reign. I feel like this time we did a little bit of research.
Yeah. First episodes are usually a little rough starting these things. You're kind of like, this is a great idea. Like, let's do something fun. And we're just going to fucking wing it. And then, as you can tell, now we research, I feel like this episode is going to go a little bit better.
We're going to be a little bit more well-prepared. All right, so, kicking it off here, we just got done, as everybody I'm sure has realized this week, that the It Chapter 2 trailer has officially hit the market.
And I am so fucking excited.
Yeah, we actually just got done finishing it, watching it again. So we're going to kind of run through our opinions of it so far. What our thoughts are, and as far as the casting and what we got out of the trailer from what we've seen. So would you like to start it off?
Sure. Just initially right off the start, I think it's cool and something different than opposed to most trailers, they'll have kind of a quick little scene that's 10 seconds and then they kind of cut off to the rest of the movie, where this one kind of had a 30-second actual little scene going on there.
Yeah. And for you guys who have not seen it, the scene starts off with Beverly, the Jessica Chastain character, coming
as
in,
an adult,
as an adult coming to the house she grew up in. So instantly, right off the bat, one of the first things I notice off it is she's drinking her tea. She's got bruises on her wrists, which is kind of gives a reflection of that abusive relationship that she was escaping from.
Sure, but also now we're wondering where it's coming from now as an adult.
Yeah, exactly. And then, she's talking to this old lady who lives in this house, and there's something a little off about her. So she is having this awkward dialogue. You can tell there's a little bit of tension. She's a little bit nervous. And then
the old lady's creepy as fuck.
She is creepy as fuck.
It's great.
Yeah. So anyway, she gives this really awkward dialogue where she says that, nothing in dairy, stays dead.
Essentially, yeah. If you die in dairy, you're not actually dead.
Yeah, and there's this really long, it seems like a minute-long pause. It's probably, in reality, it's 5 seconds.
Right.
Of just awkward silence of them staring at each other, and then she just continues on with the dialogue, right where she left off, and it was just whoa, that's weird. Okay. And then you see the blisters on her chest, and then she goes and gets cookies.
Yeah.
From there, it just kind of gets a little bit weirder.
So then Bev, that's when she starts asking about the family, and she's like, oh, well, my father moved here, in whatever year it was, had $14 in his pocket, and they joined a circus or started a circus, and she sees that picture of her father that looks awfully close to Pennywise.
Yeah.
When you have that creepy lady in the background looking around the corner, and then that naked little shimmy she darts across the
shimmy. The naked shimmy she does as she walks across the hallway. And then you kind of, it gets a little bit darker from there, which is, if for a trailer, it's dark already. So that's what makes me very excited to see the movie.
Yeah.
Because even coming out, they were talking about how the first one was a little bit more kid-oriented, more Goonies style. And this one was just going to be more adult, very serious, very horrific, and that's what I'm actually looking forward to the most about it.
Yeah, same. And I'm really pumped that they split this in two, even though at first I was really sad knowing that I had to wait 2 years to watch the second part. But I was happy that they gave a full 2.5 hours to just the children, and now they can do the same thing for just the adults. And now we have a bigger, better storyline with crazier shit.
Yeah, better character development.
Yeah.
It wasn't rushed. It felt like it was the appropriate amount of time. And first, with this whole thing getting into it, it goes through a bunch of course, highlights of the movie where, you get, the characters and you kind of get to see who's playing who. And then it kind of just wraps up with the giggling with, as Tony put it, the weird little noise at the end that he really dug.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, the It character flashes in there, and, and that's where, it goes It Chapter 2,
right.
Coming, this fall.
And it looks too, that they, changed so much from obviously the original, but I'm hoping that they changed the ending, because that alien spider thing at the end was bullshit.
It kind of, it was bullshit to me too. I felt like it kind of lost me. Like, it was just like, all right, you had this great like horror movie, and then you had a creepy whatever spider with lights and stuff like that, and it was just, it really didn't hit me the way it was supposed to.
But when you're 8 years old, like we talked in the last episode, 8, 10 years old, whatever, you're freaked out the whole fucking movie, and you get to the spider, and it still might be creepy and scary when you're that young, because if you are terrified of spiders, you're like, oh shit, now this thing's like the size of a fucking house.
Yeah, and you're more like, I feel like that character should have been creepier than the clown almost, right?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Like, you got a demonic clown, which is creepy as shit, and then at the end, it's just a giant spider.
Yeah.
Okay. But we're not, that we're not going to dig too much into like the it genre. We were just covering that. But from a cast standpoint, I am super stoked about the cast they got together for this.
Yeah.
Because you got Bill Skarsgård, which I'm like huge fan of. Jessica Chastain has been like one of my redheaded sweethearts forever. So as soon as I found out she was playing Beverly, like, I was instantly bought in. James McAvoy is an awesome. Bill Hader, another great character.
Right.
I'm sorry, what's his name? The guy who plays Richie.
Was that is that the? Oh no, I was thinking the person. I
don't
don't
know. Eddie. I'm sorry, James Ransone, which is the cop from Sinister. If you ever seen that movie,
Gotcha.
He's an
Yeah.
excellent actor as well. So I felt like they hit it right with the cast. They hit it right with the trailer so far.
Even the kid, or the guy that's playing the older Benny, he's the guy that's fucking plays like Professor X. He was like in Wanted and Split. I don't remember that guy's name.
James McAvoy.
Oh, that's
yeah.
He's essentially like the new like Samuel Jackson. Like Samuel Jackson.
Yeah, he's
was
in
fucking
everything.
everything. Yeah, and he's doing that now.
Yeah,
I mean, good for him, because he's great at what he does.
Yeah, and I was really stoked about that character as well. So they got this excellent cast together. This great storyline that, has always been something that somebody, that we've kind of looked at as one of those top horror genre films.
I think for everybody, at least in our age range, all experienced the terrifying of watching that.
Yeah,
when
the
you're a
clown.
kid.
And that's, so looking forward to that. That's coming out this fall. We'll be covering that, as well as the remakes and the original when that comes out. So
kind of be like our fall Halloween-ish time episode.
Yeah, I think it comes out September 6th, I think is what it said. So we'll be getting to that later. As for today's episode,
we decided that we're gonna do an original version versus the remake. And we have a couple of different movies we're gonna discuss here. What I want to do is start with Pet Semetary, since we just went and saw that, I don't know, about a month ago or so.
Yeah, Tony and I, this is kind of where this whole idea of this podcast kind of came into light. Was Tony and I were out having a couple beers, and we were talking about the new Pet Semetary remake, and we kind of been talking about our contrast and different thoughts on horror movies, and and he's like, I really want to go see this movie with you and see what you think. And that's kind of where the whole birthplace of this whole podcast that we're doing now has kind of came to light. So we're basically going to be talking about, you want to do the remake or the original first, right?
Well, and we can kind of go back and forth through, like, I mean, I have a few ideas I want to talk about here. Just like, all right, so just starting off, I mean, for the most part, they kept, obviously the idea is pretty much all the same thing. First thing I want to talk about, which I noticed with the remake that wasn't in the original, is like the kids you see with the animal masks.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
It's hard to explain. I felt like it was kind of cool, but I felt that it wasn't executed the way it probably could have, where it could have maximized the terror of it. I mean, that's just a weird thing to do overall. I think in general, I don't think that if it was more like of a supernatural thing, I guess, but it was just kids in town wearing creepy animal masks. Like, where are your parents at this moment?
Well, all right, so if you haven't seen the remake, when they do move into the new house, they are like kind of walking around the property, and they hear this like drumming sound going on. And as they kind of walk back in like the woods area, they see like a line of kids, maybe 6 to 8 kids, and they're all wearing different animal masks. and they're kind of carrying like a little casket, which is, you're assuming it's for one of their pets. They're taking the pet to their pet cemetery. And then when they're talking about it in the movie, I believe it was probably Judd that was explaining the situation. Yeah. For me, when I saw it in the trailer, I was like, what the fuck is this nonsense? Like, what is this now? What are we just adding random bullshit in the movie?
Yeah.
When I actually saw the movie, I was like, wow, this is actually kind of a cool little creepy thing, a cool little addition to like add to the storyline. Like, it's not just this house or the people that used to live there and like Judd that's gone to this pet cemetery. I mean, you already have an idea because there's already so many buried pets there, but you don't see or hear anything about it ever. So just having that little pinch of just being like, well, here's some neighborhood kids that are taking their dog or whatever to the pet cemetery.
Yeah, it's like almost a ritualistic thing. But I mean, I just feel like it was kind of almost to an extent where, yeah, it was creepy and it was a nice thought out concept. I just felt like it was kind of just like, why are these kids wearing masks and wheeling? I mean, it doesn't seem like a very little kid thing to do, but I guess it's because I'm not there. And maybe it's just part of the culture of the town.
Sure. And the only time, and I know when we've kind of talked about this before, you're like, it's just weird, it's just in this one part. I do remember that the only other time you ever see those animal masks again is when Ellie is attacking Judd.
Yeah.
So that scene where the Achilles gets cut,
yeah,
she's wearing that mask, and then when she's walking down the hallway to like her mom, the mask like hits the floor. So I mean, they still kind of like brought it in later into the movie. But still, I would have liked to. It would have been cool if they showed some more of it, like.
Yeah, and that's what kind of brings me into one of the things that I was kind of most impressed about was the casting that they had for the new Pet Sematary remake. Because I'm a huge fan of Jason Clarke. He was in like Zero Dark 30, which is one of my favorite movies. And you were talking about how excited you are that John Lithgow was playing the Judd character.
Yep.
So instantly I was hooked because I love Jason Clarke as the main character. He played it extremely well.
Yeah, he did do a fantastic job. And like in like the OG Judd, him being Herman Munster, and I think his accent's really funny that he's portraying for this like main accent and whatever. But with the tone of his voice, like it actually kind of suits,
Yeah.
But I was really pumped to see that it was John Lithgow because I mean, honestly, off the top of my head, I really couldn't think of who can also pull this part off. Like,
no, yeah, I'm 100% on board with that.
Yeah.
John Lithgow, and that's one thing. If you're going to do a horror remake, you have to have like a great cast.
Yeah,
I think that's one thing they realized. You can't just get no name. You have to get the right actor to play the right part. They have to have somewhat of a recognizable face, recognizable name, and then you can sprinkle in the characters, which I thought they did really well with newer actors and actresses around these two characters. But you have to have a very powerful person to play the main characters in these movies. And John Lithgow and Jason Clarke, I mean, I can't think of anybody else that would have played that role better than Jason Clarke.
Yeah, I think they pulled it off really well.
So, I mean, with that being said, as comparison to the original, we want to talk about, the differences and where we kind of thought about where the first one kind of went right, the second one went wrong, and which one we kind of prefer.
Mm-hmm.
Where I didn't like the casting in the original one. And maybe that was because I was young and didn't gravitate towards it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess, like, besides Gage being in other movies, like, I mean, I'd never even seen any of the other casts, like, obviously besides Judd and other things. Nothing that I can think of off the top of my head.
No, not that I can think of off the top of my head either. But I felt that when I saw Pet Sematary when I was a kid, it was like a big deal. Like, it was a huge, scary movie. It was one of those that I had seen. My mother had the novel in her collection. So when I, got to seeing it, it was beyond terrifying to me.
Mm-hmm.
The concept is extremely terrifying. But where, I kind of felt that it was always one of those, like when they were like, hey, we're going to remake Pet Sematary. And I'm like, yes, that's a movie that needed to be remade.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's one of those, like, I'm very protective about my horror movies, but there's certain movies that kind of lose it for me, I guess, in a sense. And I felt like the original Pet Sematary is, as it was, I felt that was a movie that needed to be remade. Nowadays they remake pretty much everything, and I pretty much
shitty.
Yeah, I know they're remaking Friday the 13th again. Oh, now and this summer they're redoing Child's Play, and not to get off subject, but I think Child's Play doesn't need to be redone. To reinforce just basically what I'm saying now, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't know. I think you're 100% right. Yeah, I mean, but probably 8 out of the 10 remakes don't need to be done, and there's a lot of them that just are just shit.
Yeah,
and and one that really sticks to me, and we could talk about this movie on another time. But Fright Night, did you ever see Fright Night?
I didn't watch the remake.
I did. I
didn't bother.
And it had Colin Farrell.
Yeah, Colin Farrell was in it.
Yeah, and which I wouldn't have picked that, but the original was like a movie that I used to watch all the time as a kid.
Yeah.
Like it was like a really cool vampire movie, and it was just a really cool story. And then I saw like the remake was happening. I was like, "Are you shitting me?"
I never even watched it.
I had to. You never seen the original?
No, I've seen the original.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
I didn't even,
it was one of those movies that I was like one of those where I didn't feel that it needed to be remade, and the casting was just like kind of like. And I saw and there was not one thing that gravitated me towards it. And I watch everything.
Yeah,
everything.
That's just one right now that definitely just sticks out to me. That I'm just like, I am so pissed off about this. Like even before I saw it, and to be truthful, like. I kind of go into those anyways with the remakes, like, for the exception of it, because I fucking love it. But, like, even Pet Semetary, I really had my doubts. No joke. Even the first time I saw that trailer to the moment we stepped into the theater, I had my doubts. But I was actually kind of satisfied overall.
Yeah, I was too. Versus the first one where, they kind of flip it around where Gage isn't, gets ran over by the truck in the first one, and the second one. This was going
to be my next one. Yeah,
and now it's the daughter, so they do like a nice little flip there. Because if you're going to do a remake, bring some originality to it, but it still has to be truthful to the story.
Right. And so, and how do you feel about them doing Ellie instead of Gage?
I thought that it was probably... I felt the Gage character in the first one was more sad when that character died. Even though when that scene happens, Jason Clarke delivers a freaking excellent moment.
No.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
you could feel the emotion when he did that. But I thought that in the first one, the Gage character, as creepy as it was, it's a 2-year-old kid.
Yeah.
So I feel like it hit more home as far as the heartfelt moment. But I think as later on, as you find out Ellie gets buried in the Pet Sematary and comes back, I feel like that's a creepier aspect overall.
I thought this was a really great idea. I think that if you're going to remake it and change
it's a subtle
things up,
change.
And it was a perfect idea because every horror movie you see with little kids and especially little girls, that are the creepy little girls in movies, are creepy as fuck. And so not only original Gage being 2 years old was able to deliver his lines as is whatever. But when you have a 7 or 8 year little girl that has personality and can actually talk and be creepy at all times, oh man, I thought it was a really great idea.
Yeah, and it's such a subtle change. They just swap the kids out.
Yeah.
And, just those little small tweaks while staying truthful to the story is what's going to make it original and make it a little bit different, throw a little bit of a curveball in there, but also make it a little more surprising to the viewer where you're just like, oh, well, that's not how it happened in the original one because nobody wants to go rewatch the same exact movie again.
And did you see that coming at all?
No.
I didn't either.
No.
I was waiting for that fucking truck because they held true to having Gage, coming out and chasing the. Actually, the remake he was chasing after Ellie, right? Because it was the hide and seek.
Mm-hmm.
But so even running to that street, I was like, okay, because in the original he was chasing after the kite. That's what it was. So I was like, oh shit, yep, this is it. This is where it's gonna happen.
Wham, it's about to happen.
And the fucking dad fucking makes it out there.
Saves the freaking Gage
and the only reason why and then she gets sidetracked because she sees Church. Is that what it was?
Yeah, Church comes back from the grave, is sitting in the middle of the road.
She gets sidetracked,
yep. And the car or the truck turns abruptly and they get Gage out of the road just in time and the base of the truck just flips and just mows down Ellie.
Smashes Ellie, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
and then that moment right there, you could see it in Jason. You could really feel Jason Clarke being this character in that moment, which is why you got to have excellent, powerful casting.
Yeah.
And then, you know, from there, you know, they did other subtle changes like the kids in the masks and all that. And of course, you know, it does the same thing as it does in the first one. You go bury your daughter in the Pet Semetary, and
Comes
you know,
back a creepy
sometimes
little
dead
fuck.
is better. And,
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I mean, since we're talking about the changes, I want to get on to church. Okay. You know, church is really fucking cool, and like the original, especially, it's funny when I have lots of friends that have that same chubby gray cat.
yeah.
You know, so every time I'd go to a friend's house, I'm like, "What's up, church?" And then of course they're yelling at me like, "No, her name's Muffins." I was like, "Fuck that! It's not Muffins. It's
Yeah,
church."
fuck muffins.
Yeah. But you know, when I saw the trailer for the new one and seeing church as like this like mangy alley cat, and I was like, "What the fuck are they doing?"
Yeah.
But after watching the movie, I realized that they just made it look like a mangy alley cat after it came back to life. So there's like, this is church before he died, and this is bad church after he died, as opposed to the original. They kept him same chubby gray cat, and all they did was have those like yellow special effects into his eyes when he was like being a dick and like hissing at everybody.
Yeah, Jason Clarke, that's kind of where everything kind of burying of church. I mean, I don't know if it's because you asked, it's one of those typical horror, but this is like literally actually probably one of those horror movies where you're just like, what the fuck is this guy thinking? Why is he keep making these bad decisions? And then he doesn't stop doing it the whole movie, and ultimately comes to his demise.
Mm-hmm.
Why the hell are you burying the cat in the Pet Semetary? Doesn't that already fucking freak you out? You bury a cat to fucking make your daughter happy that you know is going to come back to life?
And then, yeah, and you already know, you see how it turned out bad. And I understand, I mean, like, I don't...
And it's honestly John Lithgow, Judd's character's fault, because he kind of just doesn't really tell him. What the hell's that guy thinking?
Yeah, exactly.
That guy's seen it go wrong like 100 times before, you know?
Yeah. And the thing is, too, is, like, I don't have children, so I don't know the exact feelings, but I can imagine, you know, what it would be like that your fucking kid gets hit and dies, and you're like, you miss it so much that you're like, well, church is shitty now, but it's not that bad. But it's also because it's a fucking cat
And he
doesn't have
can't
the
fucking
capability, to talk or kill or whatever.
Yeah.
And then so when you bring an actual human back, and that changes, it's a whole fucking game changer.
Yeah, so he basically sends his wife and son out of town to I think it's her sister's place, right?
Yeah, I think that's what it
And
is.
he wants to stay up there to kind of get things in order, but he, in the back of his mind, he knows what he's about to do.
Right, yeah, exactly.
And then John Lithgow, Judd, knows exactly what he's about to do too, and warns him, you know, don't go doing what I know you're thinking about doing. And he basically puts sleeping in his whiskey, invites him over for a drink. And I think there's ultimately there's this, because John Lithgow's very apologetic this whole time, because he, you know, the thought process going on there is he brought the cat back to life. If the cat wasn't in the street, Ellie would be alive.
Right.
So there's almost this resentment there, but it's almost like, well, you know, nobody forced you to do this, but at the same time, like, Jason Clarke really doesn't feel that way.
Yeah, and this, I was actually going to ask you about that as well, because, like, in the original, yes, the original Judd feels bad, so, but, like, then they're hanging out, and they're having, like, that six-pack, and Judd's, you know, trying to talk to him, and this is also something that they didn't have in the new one, is that when Judd is like telling him, like, you know, remember when he's like, he starts telling about his dog when he put his dog in that Pet Semetary. It came back and it started looking rabid and had like showed its teeth off to his mom, and then his dad put it down, you know, for like the second time.
Yeah.
So then he like, you know, starts telling about like church. You know, you could put him in here. Where he shows him the way, knowing what's gonna happen. There's a point too where he asks him. The dad asked Judd, like, you know, has a human ever been buried in here? And he's like, no. But then eventually he's like, and I think this is when the beer moment is where he's like, so when I said that, I was lying. There was like the friend that like died in the military, and then the father like took him up there and buried him.
Yeah.
And then he started being all like crazy at everybody. And so like then like I guess in the book, the kid that they buried, the military kid, and came back to life, the father shot him and then set the house on fire and shot himself.
Yep.
As opposed to when they're saying in the movie, I don't remember if the dad shot him as well, and I know they set the entire house on fire. It's more like a lynch mob thing, though. Yeah. Kind of like the old school, like when like they have Frankenstein in a fucking windmill. It was kind of one of those things.
Everybody in town knows what's going on in the house.
Right, yeah, exactly. So, and that's something that they didn't have in the remake, but even though when the Judd is talking about, like, how he, like, feels bad, you know, he thought he was trying to help out, just, you know, keeping his daughter from being sad and bringing the cat back, and Gage has already been, or I'm sorry, Ellie has already passed at this point, and then the dad sleeps him like that, or slips him that, like, sleeping shit, you know, like, knocks him out, like, slips into his whiskey, essentially a roofie, and then goes on from there.
Yeah, so let me ask you one thing. I'm going to kind of go into kind of some of the things that I had dug up while I was doing some research on this movie. This is where I feel where, you know, the original and the new one kind of, if the original had better casting, I felt it would have been a better movie.
Real quick, to not sidetrack you, is there anybody that you would have preferred now that you have more knowledge of actors and movies and what have you? Is there anybody that you would place in their spot?
I don't know. Trying to think. There were so many good actors back in the day. I'm not trying to think about like really powerful actors in the early 90s. You're thinking 1990. You're probably thinking.
Yeah, it came out in 88.
Yeah, 88. So it'd been like right around that time.
I mean, you don't have to think about it right now. It's just something I'm just tossing out there. Maybe throughout the episode, if something pops in your head and you go, "Oh shit!"
I'm gonna be thinking about it now.
Okay.
Now I'm sidetracked.
Okay, sorry. All right, so go ahead, continue.
So fun fact: people don't know this. Okay, so you're thinking about who directed Pet Semetary. You know, the director that did Pet Semetary did a great job, but you know who was originally supposed to direct it? Fucking George Romero.
No shit.
Yeah, no shit indeed.
Huh, didn't know that.
Yeah, so I did like, you know, a little bit of research because I love digging into this stuff. And so what happened was they had to postpone filming and George Romero had to step out. So with that being said, I mean, like how fucking awesome would the original have been if George Romero had been directing it?
Yeah, that
would it have been more like Night of the Living Dead zombie style? Like,
well, yeah, I guess probably. I'm sure he would definitely want to throw that in there because like that's just kind of his thing. But you also don't want to make that. I mean, it's not a zombie movie, and even though it has that same kind of concept.
Yeah.
Stephen King wasn't trying to make it to be like a zombie. It's more like a, essentially kind of like a, I don't know. I guess in other movies you see like people that are possessed, like demon possessed, you know, like that kind of vindication.
And yeah, when you're getting that, like those characters together in the casting, how much more powerful is it to have fucking George Romero on the bill?
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Having his name on the title?
Yeah, so I feel like that would have been a fucking awesome opportunity right there.
Did it say why he wasn't able to do it?
Because they had to postpone the filming of Pet Semetary, and George Romero had obligations that he had to step out.
Probably afraid he was working on something else.
Probably working on something else, which actually,
or something like that.
Yeah, well, we're going to cover what he was actually getting into in a little bit.
Okay.
When we start talking about the other remake that we have on the bill. So I'm guessing that's right around the same time period, so that's probably why he had to step out.
Ah, gotcha. Okay.
So yeah, how awesome would that have been to have him on the bill? I mean, Bruce Campbell was originally, here we go, that's what I fucking forgot. This is the excellent casting. Bruce Campbell was almost cast as the lead.
Okay, as much as I would have loved that, I would have been like...
You would have been misfit, right?
Yeah, no, there would have been no way that Bruce Campbell could play that role.
Yeah.
I don't think... And listen, I fucking love Bruce Campbell. And even like his like really shitty B-budget movies, and I say shitty in a good way because I know you're heartfelt about that word.
Yeah.
But like Bubba Hotep and Maniac Cop, like those kind of movies, like he just... I don't think he'd be able to put all of it in.
But how cool would it have been as a horror fan, like to look back on it and been like George Romero and fucking Bruce Campbell on the same movie with Stephen King.
And a Stephen King movie, yeah.
That would have been like, I mean, killer.
It sounds great on paper, but
yeah.
You know, like I just don't think that Bruce would be able to pull off the emotions like legitimately. You know, like it's different when it's like Evil Dead 2 or Army of Darkness or something like that, but like it's there's no way. Like Pet Semetary is much more serious.
Yeah, Yeah, and you don't know how serious of an actor Bruce Campbell can be,
Right.
I guess.
'Cause we never really seen him
So
in
you
that
never really
situation,
know.
Yeah.
But him playing Louis Cree would have been pretty cool with George Romero directing a Stephen King novel adaptation.
Yeah, I think also, I guess, being under the wing of Romero and him guiding Bruce to being like, no, I need you to be more like this and do this.
Yeah.
Then, okay, now we have another situation here.
Yeah. And you don't know how it would have been in that time period, too. Because that was right around after Evil Dead 2, and he was kind of becoming the Chin. So you don't know what he could have done at that point.
Yeah.
Because we're so used to him playing these characters Ash-based, even in Bubba Hotep.
Yeah.
Where he's like comedic and all that. But I thought those were like really cool facts that I dug up today, and I was just like, I did not know. But yeah, and hypothetically speaking, in a perfect horror world, that's a pretty fucking rad lineup.
That would have been really awesome to see. Maybe
it could hypothetically in my head.
As
I'm gonna say it's fucking awesome.
Yeah,
but
as a child, I've been like, this is awesome. Maybe as I got older, I could be like, it doesn't hold up.
Yeah, it doesn't. You never know.
Because like I feel like even though like the original Pet Semetary, I think still overall is a pretty good movie, and there actually is a pretty big cult following behind it. Like one of my buddies is like absolutely obsessed. It's like all-time favorite like horror movie ever. And it's like how you are with Halloween, that's how he is with Pet Semetary.
Yeah, how do you think he'd feel about Bruce Campbell being cast in it as a George Romero director?
I don't know. That's a really good question, and I think that we're gonna have to have him here on an episode because he's a huge horror nerd, and I think you like more like horror knowledge than I do. I think he might even have you topped. Like it's so crazy that like he doesn't even really like go out. Like if they do go out and drink, and like they'll hang out for like a beer or two, where most of us are spending money on like, yeah, we're gonna go out and get drunk and whatever. Where he spends like all of his money like going to all these different horror conventions, meeting everybody like in these different horror movies. Like I'm talking Sleepaway Camp, he drove fucking 5 or 6 hours like a couple months ago to meet people from like the original cast from Pet Semetary. Like there was like some convention that was going on. They had like the original cast there, and he went out there, got pictures taken with like Pascal and everybody,
That's
autographed posters, all of that shit. And like his entire house, like their basement is like all done in like posters, autographs, action figures, like everything you can think of. So like there is still, I know, like a following with a lot of people, and I have friends that have tattoos of church and so forth.
Yeah. So we kind of so how the original Pet Semetary, we kind of get in the ending of both, and then we'll kind of discuss which movie has the edge in which parts.
Before we get to the ending, I mean, go ahead, but I have a few other things I want to talk about before we actually break down into the ending.
Okay, cool. Well, go ahead.
Okay,
By all means.
How do you feel about old Zelda to new Zelda? Looks-wise, they changed things differently as far as the death reasons. Like, in the original, Zelda choked on the food.
Do you know that was a guy?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you can totally see it in the makeup.
Yeah.
And then like the new Zelda, that's when she like lifted up the dumbwaiter, and then Zelda got in there and fell down. Yeah, and like snapped her neck or whatever. So they changed up the killing of Zelda, which is kind of neat. I mean, how do you feel makeup wise or compared death wise?
Comparison. I mean, I am more of a subtle guy normally, with subtle horror atmosphere and all of that. But I felt the newer Zelda character, I felt that was pretty awesome. I felt that the contortion part of it was very creepy. The makeup of it was done really, really well.
Yeah.
The dream sequences of it were just extremely dark.
I mean, I think overall probably the new one was better, but I like the way like the back, cause she had like spinal meningitis.
Yeah.
So like when like her back is like hanging out of the shirt and it's like really disfigured. I think it looks way cooler in the original than what they did with the remake.
The texture of the skin is all like sweaty and
it's
greasy.
Weird. Yeah, it's gross. Yeah, and it's just like, you ever like meet people and you just look at them and you're just like, I don't even want to touch skin with you.
Yeah.
Like shake your hand or anything.
Yeah.
And if that does happen, you're like immediately like, I gotta fucking wash my hands. Like this is
Yeah. Guys who don't shower. Yeah, I've had that a couple times. A lot of times at metal shows, there's always that guy there in the pit that's like...
Smells like shit.
Fuck, man. I'm like, all right, I'm standing out. I'm standing out this song. This guy needs to put on some deodorant or something. And he's always got his shirt off, too. It's like... It actually reminds me, we always talk about Letterkenny rat ass.
Oh, yeah,
he's like greasy with like the zits and like the hairy ass, and that's exactly what I think of when you say that. And I'm like thinking about how many times I've seen that dude at a metal show in the pit, just like shirt off, just like full BO, greasy skin going. Ugh. Yeah. So
you think overall, are you more new or old?
Well, I want to kind of, I want to kind of do the ending, and then
I meant Zelda-wise.
Oh, Zelda-wise. Oh, Zelda. Yeah, absolutely newer.
Okay.
Newer.
All right. Yeah, I just want to get into the Zelda thing first because then I was about to like get down to the ending with having like they kind of did things differently, slightly, of having everybody all together when it came down to the ending.
Yeah. So in the first one, we get the whole scene where he, Gage dies, gets injects him or whatever, and puts him to sleep, and then his wife's already dead. And so he goes and buries her in the Pet Semetary. Again, you're, like, beating yourself against a wall, like, your head against a wall. Like, again, dude? Seriously. Like, what are you possibly even thinking at this point? You're, like, hanging at tethers at this point. Like, there's nothing you can win in this fight. Like, why are you even going down this road?
Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, fuck it.
And then fool you for the frickin' third time when you bury your wife.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. And then, at the end, she comes in there while he's playing cards, sitting next to the fridge. It's one of those, horror scenes where he's already beaten down. He already knows what's kind of coming.
He
has nothing.
For it. Yeah.
Nothing to live for at this point. And it's one of those, really, you can just feel like how depressed he is. And then this creepy character comes in, and it's his wife mangled up. And it's just like...
Oh, yeah. And then he gets up, and he, like, holds her, and then, like, her eyeball, which I thought was a really cool effect for the time, but her eyeball is just like literally just oozing, dripping, disgusting brownish yellow fluid from her eye, and then they just go in for a smooch.
I know, and that's the fucked up part I was gonna bring up.
Yeah.
I'm like, this guy's fucking lost his mind, and then, like, all of a sudden, I'm just like, oh man, now this is like as deep as it gets, man. I'm like, oh dude, this guy's made so many mistakes. Might as well just take the plunge.
And
dude.
This is what it was. I mean, it does bring it to his demise because, like, while he's in the middle of that smooch, the camera pulls back, and she's got a fucking knife in her hand, and it's like swung back, and then the screen goes black, and then you can hear him screaming.
Yep.
So,
and then
in the book, I don't know if you know about this, but like in the book, he's sitting in. And this is where the cards part comes from.
Yeah.
But he's sitting at the table playing solitaire or whatever. She shows up all disgusting and just puts his hand on her, or she puts her hand on his shoulder and says, "Darling," and then like that's where the book ends.
Yeah, the deep raspy.
So,
darling.
Yeah. So to be fair, they did up that a little bit, for that original.
Yeah, no, I absolutely loved it. It stayed very true to the ending that Stephen King had, had put out there. So, then we're going to kind of talk about the ending of the remake.
Yeah.
So Ellie, who is now, they're basically, she kills the mom. She's dragging the mom to the Pet Semetary. And Jason Clarke kind of knows what he has to do at this point. Like, he's like, I gotta freaking end this. He's smarter. He's smarter than the previous film. And then it just doesn't go his way.
No. Yeah, this is where it kind of upset me and lost me.
Yeah, I kind of wished... it kind of was like... I hate when movies just hit it on so many levels. And I felt like that it was so spot on so many levels all the way through. And then the ending happens and, drags mom to the Pet Semetary. And I feel like that it's foreshadowed in a way where it could have had that, like, almost happy ending where he did the right thing and then something could have gone wrong.
Right.
But I felt like, you really want to see Jason Creed, or see Jason Clarke.
Yeah.
Jason Creed, whatever.
Creed.
Jason Clarke.
Same.
Kill, like, his daughter and, kind of get that twist ending, and then so it's like, very tense action in the woods where he's basically holding down his daughter, and he's getting ready to frickin' plunge that shovel, which I'm like waiting for it to happen.
Yeah, to decapitate her.
Yeah.
And we're done here.
Yep,
He killed
exactly.
Gage in the original. This is it. All right, we got it.
Yep. And then he gets speared, stabbed right through the back by his wife, who comes alive from the Pet Semetary.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, from there on, they basically, take him out to the woods and bury him.
He comes back
and
evil.
He comes back, and they start walking towards the truck where poor little Gage is sitting, and, he's next. And that's kind of where the film cuts out. I would have liked to see, Ellie still get killed, and maybe, a twist ending where the wife comes back at a later time. Him and Gage are sitting in the house at night, and, creepy through the window, it's raining, and you just see, the figure of his wife sitting there.
Outside the window?
Yeah, outside the window or something. Something real eerie and hinting towards it.
So still subtle, the book style.
But he doesn't know his wife's coming back, but they're just sitting there on the couch. He thinks everything's okay, and I thought it would have been way better of an execution of it close if it was, through the window, you could just see, the wife just standing there as they're, sitting there, he's telling his son everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And then it kind of cuts out there. So it's almost implying it's a lot more eerie, it's a lot more horrific.
That is actually a really cool idea for an ending.
Yeah, that's kind of how I preferred.
Well.
Yeah, that's kind of how I would have preferred to see it end. It's a little bit more, not as much he gets speared and Ellie and the family go back to the car, but it would have been a little bit better of an eerie story and more true to a Stephen King style.
Yeah,
if it had ended that way.
Yeah, it would have been more kind of that same eerie,
where we have that happy,
to the book.
We have that happy ending, and then at the end, you just get a glimpse of the wife sitting in a window, or back peering, out a window, peering in. Everything's
Leave
not
the rest
about
up
to be
to
okay.
imagination.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Would have been awesome to see her get decapitated, though.
Okay, so here's what I want to do. Out of 10, what do you give the original?
Out of the original, I mean, about probably compared to probably 7.
I was gonna say 7 as well. What are you gonna give the remake?
About a 7 as well, honestly. But this is where I kind of want to get into it. Go ahead, and what are you thinking?
I would say I would give it an 8. I would give the remake an 8.
I would give it a slightly higher edge.
Yeah, I think there was a few more cooler things that they had in the remake as opposed to the original, which is fair due to, you had fucking 30 years to have other ideas, and we have more technology and, cool shit we can incorporate, even if it's something that you've seen off of something else.
Yeah.
But I think there was some cooler parts, and I do, like I said, I love the idea that they switched up between Gage and Ellie. I thought that was a great idea. So I think overall, I would give it an 8 out of 10 for the remake.
7.5.
Okay, that's fine. And I would give 7.10 for the OG.
Yeah. But it's kind of who has the edge? I thought the ending in the first one was better than the sequel.
I agree.
And then I thought the casting in the sequel was better than the original.
Mm-hmm.
And then the overall feel, and this I think is where it gives it its edge, the eerie feel, because I'm all about the atmosphere of movies. I think the atmosphere presents the whole thing, because even when it's not scary, it's still got that feel to it. That it's almost like you say the air is thick.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that gives that edge to the Pet Semetary remake as well. So that's, I gave it the 7, and then the 7.5. I'll give the 7.5.
That's what I'm saying. I was gonna only give it a little bit more as well. I just gave it a little bit more than you.
Just give it a little more.
Yeah. No, overall I thought so. I think that's a good way to stand there. So and I know you were mentioning Romero earlier.
Yes.
And so we discussed about Night of the Living Dead a couple days ago. And I actually had no idea that Tom Savini directed a remake of it.
Yeah, and the interesting story behind this, and this is why I'm guessing, because Pet Semetary had been put off in production. So I'm just guessing anybody wants to, put a comment on this or whatever, I would love to hear it. I'm guessing that the reason, because Night of the Living Dead, the remake, was released in 1990. So I'm guessing that reason Romero wasn't able to do the Pet Semetary was because they were going to start the production on the Night of the Living Dead that came out just a couple years later.
See, part of me agrees with that, but if Pet Semetary came out in 88, which means they had been shooting in 86, 87, which would have been years apart from the production and process for that remake.
Yeah, it would. I
So the
see,
only
but I
thing
don't know
I'm
the behind the scenes
curious
stuff.
of, like, maybe I don't know what year like Day of the Dead came out, or
Yeah, he had
or
to do
Dawn of the
something.
Dead.
Yeah, that's honestly a really good question. And maybe when we take our break, we'll do a little bit of research and we'll come up with something and dig a little bit deeper into that. But so the interesting story about that is the reason they redid the Night of the Living Dead was because, I don't know if you know this, but Night of the Living Dead is like it's not a private domain; it's a public domain name. Like,
Okay.
so the public owns the night. We could literally make a Night of the Living Dead movie. They don't own the title.
No kidding.
So the reason they did that was because they went through a bunch of lawsuits afterwards, and they were basically like, okay, so this movie was remade, with, of course, for the artistic ability of it, but they wanted to own the domain of Night of the Living Dead.
Gotcha.
So, and also with the remake, one of the funny things that I came across was Tom Savini was originally supposed to do the special effects for that movie as well, but got called off to Vietnam.
Oh, no kidding.
So they had kind of missed themselves so many times before doing this remake, where they were just like, Tom Savini, George Romero was only going to let one guy do it. It was Tom Savini.
Right.
And Tom Savini and him go way back, and they just kept missing each other.
And those of you that don't know who Tom Savini is, huge legend in like the horror makeup, special effects, and like.
What's his name in From Dusk Till
80s.
Dawn?
Well, that's what I was gonna. That's what I was gonna say. Is that anybody that does know who he is? I don't remember what his name is, but he is the guy that has the belt buckle where the little gun
Sex
pops
Machine.
up. Sex Machine.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I said
that's
that
it.
a little loud.
That's
I had to
okay.
tune that out. I got really excited because it popped into my head.
That's okay. This is an exciting podcast. That's what we do. We get excited here. We get real nerdy and excited about horror shit.
Yep.
Yeah. So those of you who don't know him, you'd probably see him. Definitely see him in Dusk Till Dawn if you have seen that movie.
Yeah, as Sex Machine.
But he's done a shit ton of fucking horror movie makeup and special effects for
He's like the
Friday the
Godfather,
13th
yeah.
and Critters and all that shit. Yeah.
He's the godfather of
Ghoulies.
basically special effects makeup,
Yeah.
pretty
Mhm.
much. So George Romero was like, this guy we've been missing out on, and he gave him a chance. He was like, hey, I need somebody to make this movie. And he didn't want to direct it, but he felt like the right guy for the job was Tom Savini. So Tom Savini with George Romero was in that entire movie for as far as the production and all that goes. So he was like, Tom Savini, this is guy, you got to do this movie. Like, this is the movie you got to do. We miss each other all the time. Like,
Right.
our schedules are both booked. This is it. We're getting it done. So I felt that was like a really cool little tidbit for everybody that doesn't know that. I didn't know it until,
Yeah.
I did my research.
Right. Yeah. I had no idea. And this one, like you mentioned to me the other day, I was like, I didn't even know that they like made like a remake. I know that they like redid it in color, but I didn't know like it was done again. And even Tom Savini was even the one doing it. So that's when you're like, hey, listen, you actually like came up to my work and were like, here's the movie. Fucking watch this. We'll talk about it. I watched it today, and it was pretty much, as you said, it was shot pretty much shot for shot. Like,
Yeah.
almost everything was on par, like the exact same thing as the original. I mean, obviously, some things were slightly different, in different angles, I should say.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it was done pretty much the same. I do have to say that the acting was ceasier in this new one. At least in the beginning, things got a little better the further you got into the movie. But in the cemetery, when what's your babe's name? Oh, were you a fan of this chick too?
Oh, I'm trying to think of her.
And the thing is, and I recognized her as I was watching this movie. I go, where the fuck do I know this girl from? She is in the very beginning of Army of Darkness. She's one of the girls that works in the fucking shop S-Mart.
Holy shit.
Yeah. It took me a second. I was like, why does she seem so familiar? She still has like the same haircut and everything. And I was like, that's fucking her. But like when she's like stabbing like the original zombie, like with like the thing that she was gonna put there in the grave, and just like the acting, I was like, man, this is actually like really shitty and cheesy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even like when like the breakneck scene of like her brother happens, I was like, yep, you could tell this is like a dummy. But
I just looked it up. Yeah, Patricia Tallman.
yeah,
Yeah.
she's
right.
she's one of the employees that works there with him in the beginning of Army of Darkness.
Yeah, no shit.
There we go. Look at that. See, full circle. Fucking Bruce Campbell. But so like, I mean, overall, like once I got further in the movie, I was like, okay, this is actually it got better.
Yeah.
But at first, I was like, man, this is much easier because I feel like even like the original, they're doing a great job all the way from the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, and as far as that goes, like the it is very shot for shot, and you know, and the casting is pretty even all the way through.
Yeah.
And it was made on such a low budget for its time, the original, where they couldn't even afford to do. One of the funny things about it is one time on some post DVD scenes or whatever, they had George Romero talking, where they originally had to make it in black and white, and they had shot a week before they had got more production money, where they were just like, well, you know, we could do it in color and just reshoot the previous week, but you know, part of him felt like he had like all this old school like black and white horror where he would just felt like some of those were the scariest movies he'd seen.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
So he decided
Human
to
Centipede too. Just kidding.
Shut up. So anyway, he decided to go forward with shooting it in black and white, and a lot of the blood and the stuff in it, which I think is pretty cool, was all like chocolate syrup.
Yeah, I mean, and you can get away with that when it's black and white.
Yeah. So he felt like, a lot of the old school horror movies of people being bloodied up was just a lot more surreal and gory when it was just kind of black and white. So that's why they decided to keep it that way. Which is actually kind of cool that they remade it, because they could remake it in color. That's, you know, that was like, you know, you remake it, you can validate that remake because, well, let's remake it in color.
Yeah.
You know, they wanted, you know, if it was originally in color, I'd probably think it was not a movie to be remade. So with the remake, a couple cool characters that I really dug out of it was, there was, what's his name from, who played Candyman or whatever. He plays,
I don't remember what his name is.
He played Ben, Tony Todd.
Oh, yeah.
And then...
That's the Candyman.
Were you paying attention to see who Johnny was? Were you looking real closely?
No, but when... Are you talking about, the
young kid in the basement.
Yeah, I didn't pay attention.
Oh, no, the brother in the car.
Oh, no, I didn't even know.
You know Bill Moseley?
Yeah.
Yeah?
No kidding.
Yeah, no shit, right?
Yeah. I had no idea.
So
didn't even click.
It's like, because you look through all these, and, you know, as when I originally started watching these horror movies, I had no idea who these people were. And now I'm looking at it now, and I'm like, oh my god, it's like almost this club of people that have been in each other's movies. So you got, like, Tony Todd, who played Candyman, and then you got Bill Moseley, who was, like, most recognizable, of course, for House of a Thousand Corpses.
Right.
And, you know, 31 in the Rob Zombie series. Like, all the Rob Zombie films.
I didn't even click in. And I'm usually, like, dead on.
I
like
think it was made, like, doing production in, like, 1988, 1989, you know, before releasing 1990, so... Yeah, it's hard to recognize him.
It's true, but I usually still have a fucking eye for it. Like, even my roommate will be watching something and go, oh, yeah, that's that person from this movie. And he goes, no way. And I go, fuck yeah, it is. I go, look it up. And he does. Like, it probably pisses him off, but I do it more often than I should. But I don't know. It slipped under my radar.
Yeah.
The young kid that was, like, in the basement that had, like, the girlfriends, I was kind of laughing to myself today because I don't know if he is anybody, but he definitely looks like Tom DeLonge from Blink-182.
He does. And that couple.
And his name is Tommy, I think, in the movie.
Yeah, Tommy.
Yeah, his name's Tommy in the movie, and I go, that's hilarious because he looks like Tom DeLonge.
Yeah. So, as we, you know, kind of get into the casting of the characters of it, you got like the ultimate like hated guy in it, which is like Tom Towles, who plays Harry. Harry is probably
Cooper.
Yeah, Cooper. Yeah, Cooper. Sorry. And he is one of my most hated, even in the Night of the Living Dead original, Night of the Living Dead remake, he is my most hated, like, horror movie character of all time.
Yeah, Romero wrote that character so well.
I know.
To just, all of the moves that he's doing in that movie, even under the stress when the dude's, like, trying to hold the fucking door up against the window when they're trying to break through, and he's like, just bring me the fucking wrench and the nails. Yeah. And he's just standing there, like, yelling for his wife. I'm like, what a fucking asshole. Like, just give it to him.
Biggest dick in any movie, probably. We used to talk about that. Even my buddy Mark and I talk about that all the time. It's just like, Cooper, that fucking Cooper. Like, you know, every single time we talk about Night of the Living Dead, and there's, like, it's always like, fucking Cooper.
Cooper is the worst.
Yeah, he's just a very self-centered, selfish character.
They try to make him somewhat loving because of his care for his daughter.
And it didn't work.
But no, it's
yeah,
still.
like, fuck that guy.
But the thing, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, it was written so well. Like, fantastic.
No matter
job.
what you could have fucking done, you could have put, the nicest guy in the world to do that character, and the dialogue and the actions alone, just like, fuck that guy, So, and then, with the... So they basically... Okay, so we were kind of getting into the characters and the breakdown of all that stuff, which is the fun stuff. We, talking about the movie, and, everybody... For people who have not seen it, if you've been living under a rock and have never seen Night of the Living Dead...
No kidding.
First of all, you probably should turn off this podcast and go watch it right now before you even hear about this, because I am totally disappointed in you. So anybody who has never seen Night of the Living Dead, I'm just kidding. Please keep listening. They basically get, they go to visit the mother's grave. They drive 200 miles into the country to go deliver, or the father's grave, I'm sorry. So their mother gives them the, flowers and the decoration or whatever to put on the grave. And out of nowhere, the zombies start walking through the cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
And...
Which, by the way, a quick sidetrack. The guy that plays that very first zombie you see, I forget his name, and the original version, met that guy.
Cool guy?
Yeah, he's awesome. He's
Cooler than Bruce Campbell?
Oh, super, super nice. Probably like 10 years ago, there used to be a thing, and they still may do it, but there was like the zombie crawl that was held over at the 5 o'clock.
Yeah, I think
so you would show up
this month, I think.
Maybe. Listen, I haven't done it since my early 20s, but like you would either doll yourself up, dressed as a zombie, or they had people in like the back patio that had airbrush guns that would do it for you.
Yeah, I think that's coming up like next week.
And everybody just hangs out and drinks, and then you literally take a walk in a giant crowd of people dressed as zombies around. You go down Detroit, cut down a block, down to Clifton, come all the way over to 117th, and then make your way up 117th, and then back around to Detroit to the 5 o'clock.
Yeah, I've heard about it. I've seen pictures of it. It looks really cool.
Yeah, and that painting that's like downstairs, like above like the one shelf in my dining room. There's like me and like two other dudes. Like that was like a painting my buddy did of a picture of us from that zombie crawl.
Oh, that's so cool.
But he showed up one year as like a special guest, and we all were like, "Holy shit, what the fuck are you doing here?" And he's dressed up same exact way as he was in that movie. It was awesome.
Yeah, that would be a huge highlight for me.
Right.
That's fucking rad.
Sorry, continue.
No, I mean, hey, we're just going through the synopsis of this because this movie pretty much mirrors it point for point. They basically get caught and they run away, and she runs away. Her brother gets killed by the zombie, and they go to this farmhouse. They just run into, it happens to be vacant. Like, thank God it's there because there are hordes of zombies that are just appearing out of nowhere. And nobody at this point, where it kind of gives you that panic of nobody knows what the fuck's going on.
Right.
Like, how the fuck are these guys supposed to know? Like, this is just so random.
Yeah, the main characters, like, I've listened to the radio. Some people are saying that it's a chemical that's making people go crazy. Other people saying it's like mental, like escaped like mental patients or prisoners or whatever.
Yeah, and at that moment, I mean, there's literally nothing that gives you any indication about what's going on to this character. So you got to think at that moment, that happens to you. It's like, holy fuck. She basically, runs into this farmhouse to get away from these zombies and takes up shelter there. And then introduces one of my favorite horror movie characters of all time, Ben.
Mm-hmm.
I fucking love that character.
OG, or talking about like new one?
I think they're both. I mean, they're both excellent.
Oh yeah, they're both. I didn't know if you meant like.
I meant the actual character.
Just a general. Okay, general.
Like
character.
I fucking hate Cooper, but I fucking love me some Ben.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And because he's just, and that the funny part about that is Ben rewrote that entire script, or I'm sorry, the character standpoint. Ben's script was completely rewritten, because he felt that originally it was like some twangy truck driver with a can-do attitude and all that stuff, and
gotcha.
He kind of rewrote the script and ditched the accent and did all that.
Let's not forget too, like that was the original was made in what, like 77?
68.
Oh, 68. The fuck was I just? Oh, I was thinking of Day of the Dead. That came out in 78.
Yep.
Or 77. But in 68, Ben is a black guy.
Yeah, I mean, George Romero intentionally did that.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. Like that was like a neat idea to like your main character was a black guy.
Yeah,
which is crazy for those times.
Yeah, and a lot of the things that the misconception of any of the Night of the Living Dead series is that it was like so socially driven. But the only thing socially in like the zombies were part of the social stuff. That was media driven. The actual socialist aspect of it, where George Romero wanted to get people's attention, was by casting the main character as a black guy.
Mm-hmm.
And it even comes to that point where we'll get to the end, where we'll kind of discuss how the end kind of came to
comparison.
happening. So Ben basically, he holds up in the house, and rustling's going around. They're locking up windows, locking up doors, and then up comes the basement comes fucking Cooper. So he comes up, and they're like, "What the fuck? Where the hell have you been? Like, we've been up here for seriously, it's been probably 2 hours,
right?
And there's rustling around going upstairs, and
And he's trying to make an excuse, like, "Oh, we didn't know what was going on. We heard rustling, but there's all those things running around, so we didn't know." It wasn't until Tommy was like, "No, we heard the girl screaming for help, and we were just scared, and we didn't come up there."
Yeah,
and Cooper's just
at least
piece
be
of
fucking honest about it.
Cooper's just a piece of shit.
Yeah. So that Ben character and the Cooper character is just fucking button heads the whole freaking time they're in this house.
Yeah.
Like, who's in charge here? And everybody knows Ben's in charge.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't stop Cooper from being a huge dick about it and trying.
Ben gives him the option. He goes, "Listen, you go the fuck downstairs. That's where you want to be. You can be in charge of downstairs. We're staying up here. I'm in charge of up here."
Yep. But, eventually, they go downstairs, and then they, the Tommy character and his
girlfriend,
significant other, whatever
Jamie
she is.
Rose or something like that.
Yeah, Jamie Rose, because they all have, hillbilly names at this point, trucker hats. Come upstairs, and they were like, "We need to help out. We need to help them bolt up this house, because if, it's just the right thing to do." Because Tommy he's a weenie. He's kind of just scared, and but he's trying to do the right thing, but he's just so scared to do the right thing.
And I think also with Ben saying, goes, "I'm not going downstairs unless it's the last fucking thing possible, because it's essentially a death trap."
Yeah,
if they get in, you're just cornered down there in the basement. You have zero escape.
Yeah. So they come in, they bolt the doors down, or start hammering the doors, and they're like, "Hey, we need to get gas for the truck." That's their escape plan, is to get out and get to the truck and go where? I don't freaking
Barbara
know.
was just trying to run, but, you're right. The gas was if we can get gas, that was the main idea.
Yeah. So, kind of going with it, they bolt up the house, everything seems to go wrong, and their plan doesn't get executed. The daughter, actually, we didn't cover that, is sick in the basement.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the daughter's sick in the
Cooper's
basement.
daughter, that's the one that's sick in the basement. She was bitten by a zombie, but no one knows that.
And that's where we talk about how nobody knows what's going on. It's just they're like, she's just sick. There's no paranoia about it yet.
At that time, she just has a heavy fever, and she's passed out.
Yeah.
No one knows that, if you get bitten by one of those things outside, that you turn into them.
Yeah. So, which is actually, one of my more gratifying scenes is where the zombies start breaking into the house, and, Cooper runs into the basement and gets mauled by his daughter.
Yep.
And that's where I'm like, yes!
Yeah.
Hell yes, about time.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there on, basically, everybody's dead. Ben locks himself in the basement, but this is kind of where we come into the ending. So originally the ending was supposed to be Peaches and Cream. Ben survives.
Right.
He gets, taken out of there.
This is the original.
Yes. So Ben survives. Everything. Ben was like, no, if we're going to really shock these people, we want to shock the viewers, we need to have him be killed by the lynching mob.
Right.
The zombie lynching mob.
Yeah.
So that was his idea. Romero's like, probably like, wow, that's pretty extreme at that point.
And that's that was a great idea too. Because essentially, again, if you haven't seen it, everybody's dead except for Ben. And the zombies are all breaking into the fucking house.
And his last resort is going into the basement.
As he had mentioned earlier, that's the last resort. So he locks himself down in the basement, and he hears on the radio, all this shit, this is what's going on. And then the night passes, so he wakes up in the morning and hears a bunch of shit going on, a bunch of gunshots and stuff. So he decides to come upstairs, unlock the door, And as he's walking around the house and kind of looking outside there's like hundreds of like hillbillies with guns that are just shooting zombies. They're piling them up into like one giant pile, setting that on fire, hanging them up in trees and using them as target practice, whatever the case is. Well, someone from the lynch mob just sees a body moving around inside the house and assumes that it's another zombie. Well, unfortunately, that's just Ben trying to peek outside and seeing what the fuck is going on, since he was trapped on the basement all night, and gets shot. They just shoot right in the house and shoot him right in the head and kill him dead.
Yep. Originally, he was supposed to be saved, but they felt like that was more of a stand where they felt like the shock value of a black man being killed in that by a mob of angry hillbillies would be more shocking.
Right.
And that's kind of where we kind of get into the remake.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
Kind of ends pretty much the same way.
No. This changes.
Yeah, I say kind of.
So
does.
Also, let me mention. So since you mentioned also that Cooper gets mauled by his daughter, and the remake, Barbara, she shit's starting to hit the fan. Okay, zombies are kind of coming in. Ben and Cooper are in this like gunfight around the house, and she's like, we can just literally just run past all these zombies and get out of here. So he's like, I can't go. He's been shot by Cooper, and he's like, you just go on, get help, bring it back. So she fucking takes off into the darkness, getting away from the zombies. Yep. In the process, Cooper finds his way upstairs and finds the attic door, and he opens that up, crawls up there, pulls the door up, and hides up there. In the meantime, Barbara now almost gets shot by a bunch of hillbillies that are shooting zombies, and then they're like, "What the hell are you doing out here by yourself in the middle of the night?" So then they take her in. She passes out, wakes up in the morning, and that's when she kind of comes into where everyone's the lynch mob is all around the area. So then they get back over to the house. That's when they're burning all the bodies and all of that. And she gets up to the house, and she's like, you could see it in her eyes. She's like, God, I hope Ben's okay. He was shot up a couple of times. So they go into the house, and the hillbillies are now chainsawing that basement door down to open it up. And then as soon as they open it up, Ben shows up right there at the door, but he's already a zombie.
Yeah.
He already, he was bit in that process of trying to get through the house into the basement.
Now, does she shoot him?
No. So so one of those hillbillies shoots him and goes, drag that outside. I'm going to go look around to see if there's anything else around the house. So as she walks around the corner, Cooper comes downstairs, and Cooper says, you came back for us. You actually came back. And the camera cuts right to her face, and you can see the hate, you motherfucker. Out of anybody that was going to be alive, you should have been dead, and Ben should have been the one that should have been alive. So she just pulls her gun out, boom, shoots him right in the head, and the hillbillies come over and they go, what happened? And she goes, oh, that's another one for the burn pile. Take that outside.
Yeah, exactly.
So Cooper got what he got,
He gets what's coming to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is to differentiate, as far as that goes, versus the original versus the new one, that was pretty much all that had changed, really, was that series of probably, 10, 15 minutes at the end.
I think that whole, ending was, that's pretty much the only thing that was different than the original.
Yeah. And I don't know if it was more gratifying to have her shoot him, but it's still.
I think so.
Fuck that guy.
Yeah, because unfortunately, Ben was, he's already turned.
Yeah.
So, it was gratifying to see someone that was part of that mess and had to deal with his bullshit to be the one to fucking take him out, as opposed to, let's say, if Ben was a zombie and they, and it was Cooper walking around the house and a fucking random hillbilly shoots him out. That's not as satisfying.
No, not as satisfying.
Barbara had to deal with all of his bullshit. It was just much more gratifying to see her just go, click, boom, done.
So let's talk about why I kind of going back into why I like Ben's character so much. Ben is a fucking badass.
Yeah, absolutely.
He goes into that yard.
Even tussling with all of them.
Yeah, he's fighting zombies.
But he's heading back from the gas pump.
Yep, exactly.
Yep.
Kicking ass, taking names. holding the torch out, scaring the zombies away. I had originally fallen in love with that movie. Did you ever watch Monster Vision back in the day with Joe Bob Briggs on TNT?
Monster Vision.
He had like the death count and all that. That was like where.
No, didn't see it.
He is one of my horror icons. I'm going to encourage you to watch, look it up and research a little bit of Monster Vision. I mean, Joe Bob Briggs. It was him, some hillbilly guy in a plaid shirt, being Joe Bob Briggs, and he would like horror movies on Friday night. He would be like, we have 3 decapitations, 4 zombie maulings, 5 civilians killed, and a burn pile. Like that, he would just rate these movies, and he'd be like, well, enjoy, you know. And he would talk in between all these, kind of explaining like what they're about to see, and like in this upcoming scene, you're gonna see 2 decapitated, but it would be really vague.
Yeah.
It'd be like you're gonna see a stabbing, 2 people getting decapitated, and a house lit on fire, you know, or something like. So you didn't actually know what was happening, but you were prepared to see all these cool things you were about to see.
Makes you excited. I'm like, oh, sweet, yeah.
But yeah, that's where I originally saw the 1990 remake of the Night of the Living Dead was through that. One of my all-time horror icons was, Joe Bob Briggs on TNT's Monster Vision. But yeah, I mean, that character, Ben, overall was pretty much like the highlight, like, zombie killing badass other than Ash that I was like obsessed with growing up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like, I definitely haven't seen that, so you have to like remind me, and I'll look it up so I can check it out.
Yeah, it's super cool, and it's one of the highlights of my
childhood. Is this like one of like the like the host kind
he's
of like
yeah, he's a host sitting in a makeshift trailer park with a trailer behind him in like a chair, and he would just sit there in his plaid shirt, and he had his hillbilly twang accent, and he'd be like, you know, well, coming up in this, if we're watching Friday the 13th, you're gonna see, you know, an impaling, you know, a corpse murdering, and, you know, all this stuff. And he would just kind of run through what you were going to see. And he's like, all over, you know, I give it 5 decapitations. He would just make shit up. It wasn't actually like a scale. He would just make shit, like funny shit up about it.
Gotcha.
So it was a lot of humor to it as well.
No, I definitely haven't seen that. It's something I'm going to have to like look into, because I don't even actually think like I heard of that. Because like when you mentioned it, I like started thinking about, and I'll have to look it up because I think it's actually on Amazon maybe, but there was a TV show that was kind of like a mix of like Tales from the Crypt / Twilight Zone, but it was like a monster family like in the intro. Like it would like zoom into the house, and there was like a monster family that was like staying on the couch, and then like the kids stay on the floor, and they would go to the
what is it? Trying to think. Well, now you got me thinking.
I thought it was called Monster something.
It was like Tales. It wasn't Tales from the Dark Side, right?
No. That wasn't it. No, it was a different thing. Like, yeah, like these monsters, like, I don't know, they were just kind of like generic monsters. It was like late 80s or like early 90s. You know, it was like it took off of that like Tales from the Crypt thing, and so each episode would be, you know, like a little horror stories like Tales from the Crypt did.
Yeah.
But like the intro of it was like. And they had like a theme song and everything, but it would like come into like the house.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And then it would like zoom through, and like the mom and the dad monster, like, you know, the mom's walking through, the dad's on like the chair, the children are like sitting there in front of the TV,
and they're getting ready to watch the monster, like scary movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Scary tales or whatever.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I can't remember what the fuck it's called. If one of my friends were here right now, they would know exactly what I was talking about, but I'm just not ringing a bell. But that's when you said Monster Vision, that's the first thing that popped in my head, and I was like, until you said
Joe Bob Briggs.
Yeah.
So, all right. So which do you prefer? Which one do you give the edge to on this one?
I'm gonna keep it OG. I think the original still has the edge overall.
I kind of lean that way as well. I don't think it was one of those movies that didn't need to be remade. Like, I wasn't totally against like the first one versus it being remade. I think that it was perfect. The fact they're like, hey, we're just gonna redo it in color.
Yeah, and then like I saw like they had it like redone in color or like remastered or whatever. So I was like, okay, cool. But yeah, I had no idea what the new one though.
Yeah, and I thought it was cool that they finally got Tom Savini involved in like the movie that him and George Romero kept missing.
We're trying to do originally.
Trying to get it all caught up. And I probably give it an OG as well. Slight edge again. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's very neck and neck. So I would have to go OG as well.
Yeah, I think The remake was good, and like I said, they did, pretty much did shot for shot. The ending is really the only thing that was different, and even as gratifying as it was to have Barbara shoot Cooper, I think still having the daughter like mauling him, and just the surprise factor of Ben surviving the whole fucking night, like fighting for your entire fucking life, that entire day and night, just to like, oh my god, I got it. Everyone, they're dead. I'm out of here. Look at the window, like, oh, there's people outside, and then boom.
Yeah.
Without even knowing, you're just shot right through the head.
All right. So we go with it. We go OG.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement here. That's that the OG Night of the Living Dead is the better half.
Okay. Now we're gonna get into a really interesting remake.
Okay.
This is definitely two different movies, two different reimaginings of the same concept and same film. So, back in the day, Tobe Hooper, one of the Mount Rushmore people we put on the horror movie Mount Rushmore, came up with a concept of a combination of, what was it? It was Ed Gein
and
what was the other one? He was trying to. It was like.
Was it supposed to be Ted Bundy?
It was like something ridiculous. Like his combination was like Ed Gein and like Alice in Wonderland. It was something really weird. Like he wanted to make this movie. Anyway, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is fucking like my coup de grace. Yeah. I fucking love Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Both original and remake, so I'm very excited to cover this one. This is like one of my all-time favorite movies, and I feel like they're two different movies, completely done very well. So we're going to kind of start off with, the original. So basically they had a $60,000 budget back in the day, so it was like, what I think it was translates to $200,000 nowadays.
Okay.
To make this movie. So basically they have no money to do it. And it goes, basically these kids are, there's a bunch of grave robbings.
Yep.
So the brother and sister want to go find out their grandfather's grave was freaking vandalized. Mm-hmm. So they're in this town to kind of figure out what's happening. And what's actually happening is a lot, it's pretty dark, it's pretty twisted, especially that time. Where they had kind of they're like, oh, well, let's go visit the old farmhouse.
Right.
And then next door lives the cannibalistic, crazy family.
Yeah. And before we even get into, like, that, I mean, like, I want to compare, like, the beginnings of both. Because in the OG version, they pick up this hitchhiker, and like, this guy is kind of weird, but it's like, it's cool. Like, we're all like just traveling down. Like, hey, where are you going, buddy? He's like, oh, I'm going south. Okay, cool. We're all going in the same direction.
Why are they picking this dude up?
Because it was the 70s. And there was this guy out there with his thumb out. That's exactly what, like, that was it. Like, hey, this guy needs a ride. Cool, pull over. We'll take him with us. And everything was fine until he pulls out that razor blade. And he starts, like, cutting his, like, hand open and getting all weird.
No, it's a pocket knife that the dude in the wheelchair shows him. He's like, I got a knife. And he's, like, got his knife out, and he's just kind of messing with it. And he just grabs the knife out of his hand and cuts himself with it.
Oh, I thought it was, like, one of, like, the old school, like, the razors that you shave.
After that, he kind of, like, gives it back to him, and he's like, oh, I got a knife, too. And he pulls out that knife.
Yeah.
But he originally cuts himself with the pocket knife of that
that's
guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Because, like, when he pulls out the old school razor, that's when he, like, grabs that dude by the arm and starts cutting him.
Oh, yeah.
And that's when they freak out and they fucking kick him out of the van and take off. Now, which was already really cool, watching that for the first time as a kid. And, like, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies were fucking awesome growing up. I loved them. When the remake came out, I was really excited for it. Went and saw it in the theater. And then the beginning, instead of picking up this psycho that's already part of the family, which you find out later in the original.
Okay, so I just looked it up, so I'm sorry to interrupt you. But the birth of the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, we were trying to figure out what is Ed Gein and something else, and I was like, Alice in Wonderland. No, that's not it. It was Hansel and Gretel
With Ed
and Ed Gein.
Gotcha.
That's what his original plan was. So I had to look that up. So
Gotcha.
I was down. Yeah, I had to look that up. But go ahead. Yeah. So
Okay.
it was a little bit different than Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, because like you said, Alice in Wonderland, I was like, that doesn't sound right at all.
Hansel and Gretel. Yeah.
All right, that makes a little more sense. So like in the remake, instead of in the original where they picked up the psycho that was already part of the family, which you found out later, in the remake there's just this girl that's pretty much stumbling down the road, and like in the remake it's more present times, like in like the 90s or whatever. Yeah. So she's pretty much like half alive and just like stumbling down the road, and they're like, this girl looks like she needs help. Let's pull over and pick her up. So as they're like trying to ask her questions, like, you okay? Do you need to go to hospital? Whatever. The girl is recognizing street signs as they're driving down the street because they're driving in the opposite direction that she was walking. And she starts telling them, like, you're going the wrong way. And they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's like, we can't go this way. Like, you're going the wrong way. Trying to say, like, this way is where that fucking crazy family that I just escaped from. Now you're heading back in that direction.
Yeah,
and
turn the fuck around right now, but you're so hysterical at this point.
Everyone has no idea what the fuck is going on.
Yeah, she can't even articulate herself to be like, she's going the wrong way.
This is what just happened to me, yeah. So then all of a sudden when she pulls that like gun out from like under her skirt, it just pops her right in her mouth and just blows her fucking brains out the back window. And I was like, wow.
Yeah, that's more intense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you could actually see the part, like, I'm like, why do you pick up this hitchhiker? This one I actually believed, like, oh my god, she, like, is trying to escape from somewhere. Is a woman, so, naturally you're gonna be like, there's something wrong, like, we gotta pick this girl up and help her. Where, like, you're picking up the crazy guy with the birthmark on his face that is, again, rat-ass greasy.
Yep.
So then I'm like, okay, well, that's really weird because, I guess it's more acceptable back in the day, but still, you got to have some sort of hint here that you're not supposed to be picking up this guy. But this girl, on the other hand, looks like she's been through some shit.
Yeah.
So you're not going to drive past some woman on the side of the road that's just like, looks like she's fucking lost and looks like she's been through a lot of shit, and not put her in your car.
Right.
Yeah. That'd make you Cooper shitty.
Yeah. It's super Cooper shitty. I like that term. I think
Cooper shitty.
Yeah, Cooper shitty. Like that's something we're gonna have to use from like this point forward when like somebody sucks, something sucks. Cooper shitty.
Cooper shitty.
That's what it is from this point forward.
So I felt that was more believable and a lot more intense of a scene. Which is right off the bat, it just starts off so well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're on their way to a fucking Leonard Skinner concert. Mm-hmm. This is where kind of like the plots kind of differentiate, which is why I loved it because it was like two different movies. It was like a reimagining, I guess. It wasn't really a remake. It was basically they were using the same concept and just not completely changing it to make it a different movie, but just changed the story.
Yeah, and to be honest, there was a lot of the movie that they did shot for shot, not like throughout for like the entirety of the movie, but I mean like there was certain scenes where like, yeah, this is exactly how it went in the original. And then you watch the movie, it's a different part than it was in the original. And then you're like, oh, yep. No, I recognize this. This is the exact same thing.
They do a lot of throwback shots.
Yeah. And even, like, I thought the house was actually cooler looking in the new one than it was in the original.
Yeah, I thought so, too.
If you remember this. Okay.
Yeah. They're coming back from Mexico. Partying up in Mexico, coming back up to go to a Leonard Skinner concert with their...
Freebird.
With their Freebird, their Panera Piata.
The Piata?
Piata. The stuffed donkey full of marijuana, okay? God, pinata. Christ's sakes. How many of these am I going to have to drink? So the pinata full of marijuana that they bring back up. So basically this girl blows her head off in this one, and that's kind of where they get trapped in the town trying to get rid of the body.
Yep.
Whereas the original, you kind of got into, they wanted to go visit their grandparents' house or the old farmhouse, which is, they find out next door is where that crazy guy lives with his, the grandfather, who I guess is a character, but he's half dead at this point, but and the other two crazy males that happen to live in there, which I thought was like what they did differently with the remake was they added female character into it as well.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, they go and they find this old farmhouse next door where they kind of wandered off or whatever, and trying to find out who lives there, and who lives there another else than a crazy chainsaw-wielding maniac wearing a frickin' dead skin mask. And then, you know, it kind of goes intense from there with kidnappings and the slaughter and all that stuff. But, you know, and then I kind of go... I loved it. I love the vintage part of it a lot.
And if those of you that don't know, I mean, if you haven't seen any Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
That's right, Piata.
If you haven't seen any of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies, like, you have to fucking watch them. I mean, and if you don't know the concept, just to explain real quick, essentially everybody that they kidnap and kill, Leatherface is known as Leatherface because he's taking their skin and wearing them.
Yeah. I mean, it's some deep, dark... I mean, there was nothing like it, but even close.
No, not at all.
At that point. In its time in 1974. And it was made on a very low budget. And the stuff that you read about the original was they were filming in like 115 degree heat. Like, and the scene where they all sit around the table with the cannibal family.
Yeah.
They have a window that's literally open offset where the meat and stuff they were eating for dinner was rotting. And it just smelled so bad in there, they were dipping their heads out the window and vomiting.
Oh my God.
It was like some of the most grueling film I've ever like read about. And they weren't making any fucking money.
Yeah, and it was just like, hey, we're just gonna fucking make this film. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
Which is great because that's where all the fucking passion is. You're not doing like, well, we'll just make this film. I don't care if it's good or bad. We'll still probably make a couple million off of it. Like, this is way before all that bullshit.
Yeah, so basically, in the original, they slaughter all her friends. And they kidnap her and bring her to this dinner scenario. And that's why we're kind of talking about the atmosphere of all this. And the conditions they're working in. Is she's strapped to that chair. And when you're imagining this, like when I'm reading about like the behind-the-scenes stuff, it's 115 degrees in there, and it reeks like dead bodies. And as they're cutting in and out of this, characters are literally vomiting out the window during that scene.
I would love to see like behind the scene footage of this.
Yeah, and I don't know if it even exists because it's such an older movie.
Right.
But the reading of it, I read just like brutal 115 degree days inside 115, 120, and they were just, everything was just rotting. And there's like, nobody had a change of clothes. They were just wearing their costume attire the whole time. They filmed that whole dinner scene right there in one whole day. It was like an 18-hour day.
Yikes.
And it's just punishing. I could not believe when I read that.
That's super shitty.
Yeah.
That was super suck.
Super Cooper shitty.
Super Cooper shitty. Yeah, especially with that scene, something that's like memorable is that they don't have in the remake is Grandpa.
Yeah, they don't.
Yeah, Grandpa's essentially kind of he's in a wheelchair, so old and decrepit that he can't really move at all. But there's a scene where
he looks like he's dead.
Oh yeah,
like been dead.
Yeah.
Turns out he's still alive somehow.
But I think that they have like the girl's head like over like a bucket, if I remember correctly, and they put the hammer into Grandpa's hand, and they're like, "Hit her, Grandpa!" And he's like trying to like hit this girl in the head to like essentially kill her or whatever, but the hammer keeps falling out of his hand. So there's a small comedic part here.
Yeah.
And to a point they're like trying to like now like hold his hand to like
hold
the hammer to like hit this girl in the head, which is funny. Like it's something that they completely took out and don't have in the remake.
Yeah. One character that the characters are different in the remake versus the old one.
Yeah.
The old one of my second least liked characters is the guy in the wheelchair.
Yeah, so they did still have a guy in a wheelchair, but he was just kind of this like asshole hillbilly guy.
Yeah, he was the grandpa, which was like the grandpa in this, except he wasn't like completely decrepit.
They changed the character completely. So like that's what I'm saying. Like when I said they took it out for the remake, they still had the character. It was just completely different. Maybe that's what I should have said.
Yeah. One of the characters I could not stand, and it's also a little funny about the original, was that Franklin character, the brother in the wheelchair or whatever, and how obnoxious he is during this whole movie. Obnoxious. And the guy who plays him, Paul Painter, or what's his name? I'm sorry, Partain, was that obnoxious on set. People didn't want to fucking be around him. Like, he was just that obnoxious,
no shit.
like, in real life, too. Because I guess he was trying to be in the part, but, like, people are just like, dude, it's fucking 115 degrees in here.
I want to deal with your bullshit.
You want to deal with your fucking bullshit, dude? Like, I have not fucking showered in days. Like, it smells like shit in here, and we're trying to get this fucking movie done. I don't have time for your fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
So they would avoid him. Like, if they weren't shooting, they would have fucking avoid him. He would isolate himself.
No kidding.
Yeah, because he was that obnoxious in real life.
Huh.
Which is hard to believe, because I fucking hate the guy normally.
Yeah.
Like, or in the, the character in the movie.
He's actually a piece of shit in real life.
Actually a piece of shit, yeah. So that's my second most hated character in a movie. Is fucking Franklin. But I was really happy that they got rid of that character for the remake. I was like, that was like the biggest blessing that came to me, because I talked about it with my friend. And I was like, dude, I cannot fucking stand that character. I cannot stand the way he sounded. Cannot stand the way he acted. And I could not stand even the person from hearing about what I was reading behind the scenes. So that whole dinner scene happens, and, she's trying to get hit in the head with the hammer, and she eventually, gets away. And she runs out of the house with the guy in the dead skin mask, the Leatherface character, chasing after her. And so she, gets away.
Gets in the car, yeah.
And goes away.
Yeah.
But where we get into the remake, is where they kind of took it next level with this whole thing.
Did. Yeah, they definitely changed things up here.
So in the original, they tried to get a PG-13 rating, which if you actually watch the movie after hearing that, there's like no blood in it. But the intense, there's no blood in it.
Really?
Yeah.
Like
the blood on the hand and the blood on the back of her head. Like
It's different. Oh yeah, shit. I didn't really think about that.
They were trying to get a PG-13 rating. Or a PG rating. Sorry, they didn't have PG-13 at the time.
Oh, yeah, that was a long time
So, but
ago.
they still, because it was intense violence, like,
Dude,
intense
it was
horror.
insane. There's no fucking way.
Yeah, Toby Hooper tried to get a PG rating out of it to get an expanded audience. So that's why there's, like, no gore in it. But that's what differentiates between fucking the first one and the fucking remake, because the remake is one of the goriest fucking movies I've ever seen.
Yeah, well, I mean, even, like, they in both movies, like, they took, like, the original where he's dragging that fucking girl in the room and throws her on the hook. And the remake, it was like the one dude.
The guy without the leg?
No, that guy gets put in the bathtub.
Oh, he gets put on a hook too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, you're right, yeah.
You're talking about the nerdy guy in the glasses, the curly fro.
No, the guy with the blonde hair.
Yeah, he gets put on a hook.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, like, yeah.
But he gets his leg cut off. That's how he gets caught, remember? He's running through the sheets. And he gets freaking lopped off at the knee when he's trying to run away from the house.
Oh, yeah.
And Jessica Biel's trying to run away.
Right, I was thinking it was like the dark-haired dude that was put in like the tub later. Okay, never mind, you're right. Also, real quick, how do you feel about the makeup compared to like Leatherface, how he looks in the OG to the remake?
Oh, the remake by far. I felt like that fucking character. I mean, I felt that the character and the makeup and all that shit was... I mean, I felt like that Leatherface character right there, that Thomas Hewitt character was just fucking gnarly. So crazy looking. It
does make him more beastly and more intimidating, but I think the OG gives you that creepier, what's the feeling, like, what's the word, like you don't know, like, what the fuck could happen. Like, like this guy could be like fucking like the craziest person and can do... It's possible to like do fucking anything.
Yeah.
I think I would go OG Texas Chainsaw over the new one, looks wise.
I felt like...
Because I feel like the new one kind of was like more like Kane from like WWF or something like that.
I could see that. The intensity and the darkness of that character overall with the remake was just fucking... I mean, it was next level shit.
It wasn't bad by any means. Like, it still looked cool. I just think that the original gives you more of an uneasy feeling, as opposed to the new one gives you more of like an intimidating feeling.
Yeah. So we got a pretty good coverage on, the first one. So now we're going to kind of dig into the remake, which I'm very excited about, because this is kind of where the birth of horror movie remakes had kind of really started hitting its stride. Was in 2003 they had, done this reimagining, I guess, of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We're like, what could we do? And the casting of it was great again. I fucking love Jessica Biel.
Yeah.
In that. That's actually, I fell in love with her for a very,
babe.
Yeah, she's total babe. Total Bonnie McMurray, if you will.
Bonnie McMurray.
So I felt that, she was excellently cast. Her boyfriend was excellently cast. All around, I love the cast of it all. So basically, the way, and it's a totally different movie, so we have to explain this movie versus the last movie.
Right.
So we kind of, talked about the first movie. Now we have to talk about, okay, so they're on their way to this Leonard Skinner concert, and they find this girl on the side of the road, and, we talked about before, she shoots her head off. Well, now they're trapped in the town because they got to figure out a way to get, somebody to give this fucking body to.
Mm-hmm.
They're in the middle of fucking nowhere, and, so they run into my fucking man, Lee Emery, who is the sheriff of this fucking town, and Lee Emery is one of my all-time favorite. Full Metal Jacket.
He's great in pretty much everything he's been in, even in in a comedy role, serious role, horror role. He's great in everything.
Yeah, and most
R.I.P. by the way.
Yeah, unfortunately. One of my favorite lines was Full Metal Jacket, how tall are you? I didn't know they piled shit that high.
Yeah.
That's one of those, and it's a once in a generation type voice and character you get, but Lee Emery's the sheriff.
His voice is so recognizable too.
Yeah, and he plays the same guy in every movie. He basically plays a drill sergeant that happens to be crazy, but they don't know it at the time.
Right.
So he's the sheriff, and they basically start giving these guys the run around town. Eventually they hook up with the sheriff. The sheriff is Lee Emery, and then he saran wraps this fucking body instead of it with a police car. So it's kind of weird, but at the same time you're in the middle of fucking country, so you don't know what to fucking expect.
Right.
You're expecting incest and weird hillbilly shit to go on, and so it's fucking weird. And they kind of get a sense that it's not right. So he wraps this, and he cops a feel on the corpse, as when he's wrapping her up and whatever, and then they're there's something wrong about this, and he snaps. He's like, listen here, you don't tell me how to respect a dead body. I respect everything. I respect dead bodies and all that stuff, and goes off Lee Emery style, drill sergeant.
Yeah.
And so he tosses this corpse in the car, and eventually, gets in the trunk. He's like, don't toss that thing in the backseat of my fucking car. And he puts the dead body in the trunk, wrapped in fucking saran wrap. Meanwhile, there's Jessica Biel character and the other character have left prior to this. The friend character, not the boyfriend character, have left prior to this to go look for help. Because they don't know where the fucking sheriff is. So, we don't know where the sheriff is. So the sheriff shows up while they left. But meanwhile, they find this fucking farmhouse, which is the farmhouse. And they run into old grandpa in the wheelchair.
Yeah. And that's what I was saying earlier. He's a total asshole. And that, every scene that he's in, he's complete fucking dick. So yeah, and then I know that there was you end up finding out later that the sheriff turns out to be part of the family.
Yep. And this is actually after one of the I'm sorry, man, I can recite this fucking movie line for line. I have seen it at least 300 times probably. I'm telling you, I used to watch it all the time.
That's a lot.
I've seen. I'm talking about 100, not to be over exaggerating, but probably I would say 100 times. So one of the best things is they go into this house, and they go, and they see the grandfather character, and it's you can't. One of you guys can come in my house and use my phone or whatever. So while she is using the phone in the house, the other character sneaks in, and that's where you kind of see the first Leatherface character. He's walking around the house. There's fucking pigs and fucking, just disgusting shit everywhere. It's just a redneck. You don't know where you're fucking at.
Right.
Very redneck, cannibalistic looking house, but you're in the country, so everything's fucking weird out there. And he goes and he stares into that room. One of my favorite scenes in the entire movie is he basically, nerdy guy, glasses, the character guy goes up there, and and there's this drum beat on this cartoon, and he's like looking in the door, and all of a sudden, just fucking out of nowhere with a hammer comes Leatherface and just fucking wham right on the back of the head, and he's just like convulses on the floor. And then he takes him in there and does the infamous like takes him down to the basement and slams the door shut, you know, and then Jessica Biel's character comes outside, and she's like, "Well, where'd he go?" He's like, "I don't know. He's not here." So she goes back walking to the to the van where Lee Emery had just taken the body. But yeah, so I mean, kind of keeping it moving forward.
Yeah, this is where I was talking about. He's the one that gets put like in like the bathtub and all that shit.
Yep, he gets put on the bathtub and he gets hooked. Everybody gets put on a hook. So I guess, I mean, from that standpoint. So they're like, well, he's not here. Well, we got to go fucking find him. So he gets her other friend to go find him. And so they go back to the house. And that's where the big threat comes in of like where the grandfather's sitting there pounding on the floorboards when Leatherface is in the basement, and he's like saying, "Do it. Do it, boy. You ain't fucking shit."
That's what I forgot to mention earlier, yeah, with the grandpa. Do it.
Fucking do it. And then, you know, Jessica Biel's trying to sneak through the house trying to find, you know, the other guy. And so he basically, you know, hits the floor several times, and then Leatherface comes out just fucking like a mad dog with a fucking chainsaw chasing after this guy, and they get this huge fight scene, and he starts running. That's where he starts running through the blankets or the sheets or whatever.
And
lops his fucking leg off, and that's kind of where the whole thing just kind of starts falling apart. So eventually, you know, Lee Emery returns back to the van, or you know, they go back to the van and they're like, "We gotta get the fuck out of here." And then Lee Emery comes and shows up and finds a fucking joint in the fucking ashtray.
Finds a way to keep him there.
And then takes the one guy hostage, the guy with the glasses, and yeah, I mean, there's so much shit that goes on in that movie that's fucking so excellent.
Now, I know there's a lot of these movies. Is this, and it's been a while since I've seen this remake, because I own this one, I've watched it a bunch of times, but is this also the same one where the one girl has like the scar on her chest, where he kind of like where she's like tied up like in like the meat factory?
No,
that's a different one. Okay, I'm gonna save that at the beginning. Oh, that's right. Okay, all right, I'll save that for another one then.
Okay. I don't. Yeah, and I can spot this movie like line for line pretty much. So basically, like Lee Emery does this terrifying scene where he's got everybody on the ground. He's like, "Whose joint is this? Fucking tell me. You know, you guys on fucking drugs. You guys are talking about people killing people in the fucking fields and the woods." He's like, "One of you guys is all fucking high," and you know, and then he pulls out the gun and gives it to the nerdy guy with fucking glasses.
Oh yeah.
And he goes, you know, whatever. He's like, "Show me how she fucking did it." And he's sitting there and he's just like, you know, like this, how the girl in the van killed herself, because now he's trying to make them think that he thinks they're responsible, which of course he doesn't think. Basically, it's just this horrific scene, and eventually, like, he's like, you know, holding up his chin, he's like, you got to put it in your mouth.
Yeah.
And then the nerdy guy in the glasses makes the fatal mistake of fucking pulling the gun on Lee Emery. And he's like, "You ain't got the fucking balls, boy." And he pulls the trigger, and he goes, and it just goes click.
Yeah.
And that's where we're fucking, I mean, you're just like, Lee Emery is just like, you just fucking killed a police officer.
Yep.
Get out of the fucking van, like, throws him back in the cop car and takes off without everybody else. But, you know, who else is behind is Leatherface is coming up there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I remember this scene very well, actually. As you're mentioning it, I'm trying to think of like, well, I don't know. Actually, before I get into that, do you want to go more into that, or?
I mean, no. I mean, if you want to continue, I mean, the story just has so many fucking crazy parts to it. Lee Emery smashes the kid's teeth in with the freaking gun, and he's like pulls out his fake teeth, and he's like, "Hey, you know, we're twins now."
Yeah.
After he tries to bribe him with the Leonard Skinner tickets.
No, and then let's see. So like in the original ending, you know, when the girl is like running down the road and Leatherface is chasing after him, and she gets picked up, right? There's someone that's driving on the road. She jumps in, and then that's when like the infamous of like Leatherface is kind of
The chainsaw dance.
yeah, the chainsaw dance, I guess, if you will, and then ends up like catching his own leg, and you know all that shit's going on. The ending for the remake ends differently.
Yeah,
It's the one where she gets in the car, right? Yeah, and then like, yeah, as
she gets away safely.
yeah, she's in the car and she's looking through, and then the chainsaw like catches the side of the car,
Yeah.
right? And then he's just kind of left on his own there.
Yeah, and there's just, I mean, there's so many scenes in it. We could go on for a full episode about how many crazy scenes between where she runs into the camper and there's the crazy hillbilly girl and the overweight girl.
Oh shit, I
that
forgot
has
about
the
that.
baby, which is why she goes back to the house, and she like rescues the baby, and you know, and it just kind of just there's so many levels to it. And the meatpacking factory scene while she's being chased by Leatherface,
yeah.
and you know, and that's where it's just you know, she fucking hacks his arm off with a fucking meat cleaver.
Was it a like an old story or something, a part of maybe the original movie where like it was like you know, they had that meat packing plant where they were killing the people and then using that plant to like put the bodies in and then like grounding it down and using it for chili, right? Like,
Yeah.
Was that like a just part of the storyline, or was that something that was supposed to be based off of a true story thing?
I think it was based off a true story.
That's what I thought too.
But yeah, they whole family dialogue and all that, and the casting all together, with Jessica Biel and Lee Emery, and you know, the guy who plays Leatherface, Thomas Hewitt or whatever. I thought that it was extremely well done, and eventually, you know, Jessica Biel gets away with the baby.
So then, so where are you at here? What are you rating the OG to the new one?
I rate the OG as probably 6.5.
Okay.
6.5.
Okay. And then new one?
The new one's almost a fucking 10 for me, man. I fucking love that shit.
The new one is done really well, and I know we discussed this earlier that out of like a lot of remakes that are done, like this is definitely one of the best that were ever made.
Yeah, that's why we kind of saved the best for last as far as that went. The other ones were so close for me.
Right.
And it's not that I don't love the original, but the brutality, that was like one of the goriest horror movies I had seen at that time.
Yeah.
Like where he's dragging that fucking one guy down the stairs without his leg, and he has his nail on the wall and he pulls it off.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, dude, like there's so many bad, gnarly scenes in that movie.
Especially, there's like a bunch of, like in those movies too where like people are dragging their nails and a nail gets ripped off, or what about movies where like they're like pulling like teeth out with like a fucking like wrench, man? I'm like, oh
nails
man,
is
like
my soft spot, dude. Like,
oh man, god damn
it
it.
gives me the worst reaction ever. And I remember like almost having, I went and saw it in a movie theater with one of my exes from college, and I remember just fucking freaking out. I was like, you know, and I don't twitch very often, man. Like I say, you know, the rest of the movie's okay, but that scene where he pulls his nail off, like getting taken down the stairs by the Leatherface character.
Yeah. Nails aren't so bad for me. It's teeth. Teeth are worse for me.
Yeah.
I like when I see movies that like teeth are getting pulled out and shit. I'm like, it like no joke. It like makes my jaw like clench up, like, and like I don't know. It's just like the weirdest feeling, like that like tingly feeling, like in my jaw. I'm like, oh god damn it. Like the same thing. When I saw wow, drawing a fucking blank. What's the movie with Edward Norton when he was like the Nazi? American
History X.
Yeah, American History X. That curb stomp scene where he's like, "Put your
it's
fucking teeth on the
cringy.
curb." Oh my god, made my teeth hurt so bad.
Yeah, that shit's no fucking joke. Yeah, and it's weird how like small things like that. Like I could watch somebody being gutted. I could see somebody put on a fucking hook.
Yep.
And that just like fucking nail being pulled off. It's just like right now I'm just like flicking my fingers in midair right now because that's literally the mannerism. It just makes me do that. Just like, I don't know. It's just like reassuring that they're still there. Some mental part of me is. It's like I could just like literally I could feel it when it happened. So I mean, as far as like, I mean, I would give it a 9.5 to be honest. But I'm huge on atmosphere. Atmosphere hits on all levels. Story felt hit on all levels. cast felt hit on all levels, and it was its own and like gore factor. I felt like it wasn't overly gory, but it was pretty
still,
fucking graphic.
Right,
like,
absolutely,
pretty gory movie overall, and I felt the ending was excellent. The characters overall were excellent, and even the post-movie footage where the cops are in the basement.
That
was cool too.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say too. I forgot about that. Yeah, it's like when they're like looking through, like, you know, like, all right, we're investigating everything now,
the
and then
house and
all of a sudden, he fucking pops out and like the fucking camera just like
goes crazy and stops, and this
like
is like
freezes.
It gives you that whole throwback to where they originally marketed it. This actually did happen in Texas.
And
they're like, this is the last actual known footage of Leatherface,
Thomas Hewitt,
yep. Otherwise known as Leatherface. But yeah, overall atmosphere, the cinematography, the house, the grandfather, Lee Emery, of course, as the father, great. Intimidating guy, perfect for that like, can't think of a guy you would cast in that role better. Right. Which I don't think. I think that he takes on that character no matter what. Every character he plays is like, who would you fucking cast other than this guy?
No, yeah, I agree with that. I think for me, the original, I would give an 8 because I feel like, this was like an original idea back in its time.
Yeah.
Like this is such a crazy idea, and it still fucking holds up today.
Oh yeah.
It's iconic. There's even fucking video games that are not only introducing like Freddy, Jason, but also Leatherface.
Yeah.
Which is fucking cool because like Mortal Kombat, for example. Like
he was the first one.
Right.
1974. That's Leatherface.
Right.
Know?
That's what I'm saying. Like when you're a kid, you're watching like, "Ooh, this is fucking gnarly as shit." When you become an adult and Mortal Kombat's like, "Yeah, you want to play as Leatherface?" You're like, "Yeah, I'd love to fucking wield this chainsaw around and gut people. Like, that's badass." So I would give the OG one an 8 because there's also a lot of really cool shit. Whether there wasn't as much gore or not, it was still cool story, awesome backgrounds, everything in general.
The only reason I gave it like I would get 6.5, 7. I'll give it like a 7. It's just the characters. The characters to me, some of the characters were so obnoxious to me. Like the kid in the wheelchair, the hillbillies were, over the top of like crazy mentally, like, like crazy to listen to.
Sure. No. And I get that. But like back then they're like, yeah, all right, that's cool. We'll write this fucking down or make this character or whatever. New one, I think I would agree with you being 9.5.
Yeah, it
was done.
And if you haven't
really
seen
well.
it, you need to watch it. It's one of my all-time favorites where I hate, and I always say that, I don't think that every movie needs to be remade, but the reimagining of it was just so spot on.
Okay, so I think this is about the time we can wrap this up. I think this is a pretty solid episode, unless there's anything else you want to add to it.
No, I'm good. Watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre if you haven't seen it. Remake.
Absolutely.
And original.
Yep. So listen, guys, if there's something else, like any other movies that you want us to review, TV shows, maybe video games, something like that, you can send us an email, which is to creepingitreal@gmail.com. Let me spell that out for you. creepingitreal@gmail.com. Send us an email, or you can even comment on this video alone. And like I said, we'll take a look at everything. If there's something you think is cool that you want us to review, and that way we can review it, you can leave comments, whatever it may be. Send it in. We'll fucking do it up.
Cool.
Anything else you want to add?
No, man. Thank you for listening.
Cool. Thanks for listening, guys. Again, I am Tony.
And I'm Josh.
And we are Creeping It Real. Thanks, guys. See you later.
Later.
Bye-bye.